Hey there, Saki here from Saki Tech. In today's video, we will do a full comparison between the iPad Air 2 versus the iPad Pro. Now, just to give you a perspective, the iPad Air 2 was released in October 2014 and the iPad Pro in November 2015. So the iPad Pro is clearly the latest and greatest tablet from Apple. However, iPad Air 2 is still a powerful tablet and a leader in the 10-inch tablet market, and I'm sure people are wondering what's the difference between the two. What we are going to do in this video is do a deep dive into the specifications, software features, and unique features of both these tablets and see if we can answer questions like, shall I get the iPad Air 2 or the iPad Pro, or perhaps which one is specifically right for me, or simply which one is better. So let's dive in and find this out. I will first go over categories in which I think they are very similar and then slowly move on to everything that is different, followed by a conclusion. The first thing I want to take a look at is the design and the build. And this is easy. Both the iPad Air 2 and iPad Pro are crafted from metal, encased in a beautifully formed aluminum unibody. It's the same story. You get the brushed aluminum body on the rear, beveled edges, a slab of glass on the front, and the famous home button with the Touch ID sensor. Just look at them. You cannot deny that they're gorgeous, even if you hate Apple with a passion and lust after Android. Also, when you hold them in your hands, they will feel like $1 million. That beautiful, sleek, and polished metal feels fantastic when you hold it, but I do warn you, it is also prone to glide out of your hands onto the floor if you're not careful. You will probably need to buy a case or some sort of protective skin to make sure your investment doesn't shatter to 1,000 pieces. Okay, so that was easy and that's that. Let's move on to the software. The software experience is almost the same. Both tablets run the latest version of iOS and largely offer the same exact experience. Now, iPads are all about fast and smooth operation, ease of use, and a venue for quality apps to get things done or to enjoy some great looking games. Whether you get the iPad Pro or the iPad Air 2, you get access to all the same apps from the App Store. The only exception is that some apps on the iPad Pro will be more useful with the use of Apple Pencil, which I'll be talking about in a minute. Now, obviously, the bigger screen on the iPad Pro will allow you to work with some features and apps much better. For instance, when working with split-screen multitasking, you get more room per app, which makes it easier and more productive to multitask. If you are watching a movie or playing a game, it will be much more immersive on a large screen. Or if you're editing a movie or an image, once again, you have more room to get work done. It's just like having a smaller desk versus a larger desk to work on. So the software experience is just about the same. Now, next up, let's dive in and take a look at the processor and memory to see the difference in power between the two. The iPad Pro comes with a 64-bit Apple A9X chip, which is a dual-core processor clocked at 2.25 GHz with 4 GB of RAM, whereas the iPad Air 2 comes with the A8X chip with a tri-core processor clocked at 1.5 GHz and 2 GB of RAM. Now, Apple has announced that the A9X chip is 1.8 times the CPU performance of the iPad Air 2 and double the graphics performance, so we'll do a few benchmarks to put this to test. The first benchmark will be the standard Geekbench test, which will use some real-world scenarios to stress test these devices, and then we can compare the numbers. So let's dive in. So we made sure nothing was running in the background, and we're going to launch the test right now. iPad Air 2 first and iPad Pro next. And let's just fast forward this to the end and take a look at the numbers. So as you can see, the single core performance on the iPad Pro is considerably faster than the iPad Air 2. And if you look at the multi-core score, it also is much faster. Even though not as fast as a single core, it's still 20 to 30% faster on the multi-score and 80% faster on the single core score. The second test will be for iMovie. We will export a 1-minute video clip that was recorded in 1080p at 60 frames per second on an iPhone 6s Plus, and we'll see how much faster the iPad Pro will accomplish the exporting process. Alright, so let's do a save video from the sharing option, and we're gonna save the video in 1080p, of course. So let's tap on save video on the iPad Air 2, iPad Pro, and choose HD 1080p, and I'm going to start the iPad Air 2 first, as you can see, and the iPad Pro right after. There was a 1 second delay, and as you can see, so far they're pretty close to each other. Okay, so we know that the iPad Pro has a 1 or 2 second lead already, and it's almost over on both of these guys. Let's see which one gets done first. So the iPad Pro started later, but it got done first, so it's definitely faster. And a couple seconds later, the iPad Air 2 was done. So it's obvious that the iPad Pro will export your movies faster. In this case, there was a 4 to 3 second lead. Alright, so the iPad Pro is in fact faster. Now here's the situation though. The iPad Air 2 is already a super fast device, and for daily tasks such as browsing, app usage, movie watching, and even gaming, it's perfect. The extra speed that the iPad Pro offers, I think, is more useful when dealing with heavy-duty production apps such as iMovie to edit a movie, especially when you're working with larger files and higher resolutions. I don't mean to say that the iPad Air 2 cannot handle production tasks, but the iPad Pro simply is going to get them done faster. And to some people, that actually matters. Let's quickly take a look at the weight and dimensions. So the iPad Pro measures 305.7 millimeters in height, 220.6 millimeters wide, and 6.9 millimeters thick, and weighs 713 grams. The iPad Air 2 measures 240 millimeters in height, 169.5 millimeters wide, and 6.1 millimeters thick, and weighs 437 grams. There isn't much to talk about here. We know that the iPad Pro is the larger device in every respect, but I simply love to share these numbers anyway. So let's move on to something that actually matters: display quality and display size. The iPad Pro has a 12.9-inch screen with a resolution of 2732 by 2048 with 264 pixels per inches, and the iPad Air 2 has a 9.7-inch screen with a resolution of 2048 by 1536 with 264 pixels per inches. Both the Pro and the Air 2 come with gorgeous displays. Now the iPad Pro does have an enhanced multi-touch technology that allows for the Apple Pencil to work with it for precise note-taking. But otherwise, the quality and sharpness of the display is equal for both. You get the same amount of pixels per inches on either tablet, which is 264. Both of these displays feature anti-reflective coating for better daytime visibility and fingerprint-resistant coating for reducing those annoying smudges from your fingers. And honestly, the only decision to make here is whether or not you need a larger screen or not. So let's move on. And let me quickly talk about the speakers, which are considerably better on the iPad Pro. First of all, it has 4 high-fidelity speakers, 2 on the top and 2 at the bottom, that produce 3 times more sound output than the iPad Air 2, which only has 2 speakers at the bottom. So if you watch videos or listen to music, you can bet that you will get richer and louder sound from the iPad Pro. And trust me, I did a test on this. The iPad Pro sounds much richer and louder, especially for watching movies. So just keep that in mind, and let's move on to the Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil, when used to write, draw, or sketch, is extremely accurate. It really does offer pixel-perfect precision like Apple claims, and it does it with no lag. So the moment the tip of your pencil touches the screen is the moment it starts to write. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get my hands on an actual Apple Pencil for this production, but I have done some extensive research and do have some hands-on time to tell you that the Apple Pencil is a fantastic accessory for those of you who are interested in the iPad Pro as a device to take notes, draw, sketch, and create. Not only do you get a close to natural sense of writing and drawing, but you can digitally enhance your work to make it even better. And remember, the iPad Pro has a built-in palm rejection technology, which means you can use the Apple Pencil while your palm is actually resting on the display without affecting anything. And yes, it works flawlessly. Now obviously the iPad Air 2 is completely lacking this feature. This is a comparison video, and I'm compelled to tell you that if serious note-taking and sketching is your thing, the iPad Pro is obviously the much better choice thanks to Apple Pencil. Alright, so let's talk about the camera. So whether you get the iPad Pro or the iPad Air 2, you get the exact same cameras, both on the rear and the front. On the rear, you have an 8 megapixels iSight camera with an aperture of f2.4, and you can record video in 1080p at 30 frames per second. On the front, you've got a 1.2 megapixel FaceTime camera with 720p video recording capability. I never use the cameras on my tablets ever, so I don't care about this too much, but if you want to do video conferencing and take some snapshots and some videos on the go, this will get the job done. And of course, we've got the Touch ID sensor on the home button. The fingerprint sensor works flawlessly 99.9% of the time on both of these guys. Now the iPad Pro is faster to unlock your device when your finger touches the Touch ID sensor, but otherwise they both work flawlessly except for the little speed difference. But this is not a big deal. So let's move on to the power and the battery. So the iPad Pro has a battery capacity of 10,307 milliamp hours, and the iPad Air 2 has a battery capacity of 7,340 milliamp hours. We do have different battery capacities. The iPad Pro has some more power, but Apple advertises the exact same battery life for both the iPad Pro and the iPad Air 2, which is up to 10 hours of surfing the web on Wi-Fi, watching video, or listening to music. A healthy mixture of all these three activities should